In 2012, the folks at Almost Human released the first Legend of Grimrock. It was a superb reimagining of old-school dungeon crawling classics, made fresh and contemporary for a modern age. But where the first Grimrock was able to rely on nostalgia to feed an audience starving to play an all-but-dead genre, the Legend of Grimrock II has taken many steps forward, making it feel like less of an extremely well-executed tribute to dungeon crawlers and more like a fully realized vision of what the genre can aspire to. The second installment of Legend of Grimrock has built on nearly every conceivable aspect of the original, for the better, yet still maintains what made and still makes those old-school dungeon crawling classics so great. Broken down to its most fundamental aspects, Legend of Grimrock is about puzzles, combat, adventure, and survival. Much of Grimrock 2 is very similar to its predecessor in that way. You still create a team of 4 characters, combat is still real-time action and grid-based, a lot of the puzzles still consist of pressure plates and little switches hidden on walls, and the odds are definitely still stacked against you. But for every identifying characteristic of the original that's remained the same, just as much, if not more, has changed, most notably with the character creation and customization. In the original, class creation was pretty standard fare. You had several distinct races, all with different starting attributes, and 3 classes, fighter, rogue, and mage. Grimrock 2 has expanded on this, and then some. Now, in addition to the new rattling race, there's also a wide range of classes and subclasses, like fighter, barbarian, knight, wizard, battle mage, alchemist, rogue, and so on, all boasting their own unique traits, like the knight receiving armor gains with each level and a 50% increase to evasion from shields, or the alchemist gaining a greater likelihood for firearms, one of several new weapon types, to not malfunction. Additionally, instead of classes having their own skill tree and perks like before, now the skill system is universal and open to all classes, meaning now you can have a fighter dual-wielding and backstabbing with daggers while poisoning enemies with earth magic, or a battle mage in plate armor can throw around protection spells while chopping things up with a sword. The improved class diversity in combination with the universal skill system opens up the flexibility and potential team makeup, allowing you to more finely tune the group to your desire in countless new ways. Adding even yet another level of character customization is items and equipment. This is due in part to the new mechanic of items that feature special abilities or attacks when charged. With a bit of expendable energy and the right skill points, many items can now use special abilities, like a sleeping shot from a blow dart, a dagger that leeches health points, a protective barrier that resists fire damage from a shield, and much more. All these features to equip and create your character brings a diversity that's vastly improved over the original game. My only minor complaint is that the magic feels largely unchanged. Yeah, spellcasting definitely feels more streamlined with touchpad interfacing in mind, but overall it's not that different. I would have loved to see a few more categories outside wind, water, fire, and earth elements. Necromancy or holy skills would have been a nice addition. Overall though, the range of what you can do with the character and your team as a whole is greatly changed, definitely for the better. But class creation and customization isn't the only alteration of the Legend of Grimrock. One extremely obvious change is the setting of the Isle of Nex through stage and world design. Unlike the first Legend of Grimrock where the game took place descending into the depths of a single ominous dungeon, the Legend of Grimrock 2 has an overworld with varying dungeons and environments fanning out from a central location. This overworld is completely daunting at first, with multiple routes to explore and puzzle pieces and clues hidden in one location for the next. And eventually, after a lot of exploration, hidden passages connect routes previously unknown, creating shortcuts, and teleportation chambers span great distances in the blink of an eye. Once you start to fill out the map, the Isle of Nex begins to reveal itself as a brilliantly interconnected world, constructing a world more marvelous than the single dungeon of Grimrock ever was. The individual dungeon design is just as impressively realized as that of the overall island of Nex. The compartmentalized dungeons utilize a more complex and interesting level design than before. Multiple planes within the same interior literally and figuratively add more depth to puzzles and stage design, as well as combat. The way the environment is constructed plays a big role in the combat of the game, especially since your team is always on a grid-based movement system. Being mindful of your surroundings is vital to your survival. If you get stuck in a corner with waves of enemies surrounding your group, you can pretty much kiss your ass goodbye. Combat is at its best though when situations have space to maneuver and still remains challenging enough with multiple enemies to keep you on your toes. Quick and careful movements and fast reactions become essential. The combat is at its most mundane, however, usually when it's a one-on-one confrontation. When this is the case, sidestepping and waiting for your opponent to make a move, so you can then stick and move, becomes somewhat repetitive and overly predictable, although there are some enemies that swipe and attack sideways, making it even more critical that your party is always on the enemy's unarmed flank. Many of the enemies and different enemy types do manage to bring their own characteristics and required strategies to any battle situation. The ogre, for example, will charge at your group and swipe with his huge club faster than you might expect, delivering extremely punishing attacks in dangerous close quarters combat, but his thundering steps and screaming tell of an impending charge make him easy to predict. Whereas the giant toad will jump straight up into the air, out of sight, and land several tiles behind your group, and then lick items straight out of the hands of your teammates, easily making it one of the most unpredictable and disorienting encounters. Another welcome feature to enemy types in combat are the new addition of boss encounters. The first game only had one extremely suiting boss encounter that perfectly complemented the Legend of Grimrock's overall themes of combat and puzzles by combining the two into one climactic battle. But the second installment has a handful of tough boss battles throughout. I don't know if any of them reach the same caliber of the first game's boss, but they're definitely a welcome highlight to add new characteristics and mechanics to overcome to combat. Overall, the bosses, just like the more frequent enemies, seem to be more fluid and reactionary in their behaviors than before, essentially keeping you guessing. More than likely, your first time encountering a new creature, battle situation, or boss will earn you a game over screen. But learning the different enemies' actions and movesets is a puzzle in and of itself, and overcoming these challenges is very satisfying. But deciphering the puzzles of combat is only one side of this dungeon crawling coin. The mysteries and puzzles spread throughout the Isle of Nex are vast, both in their number and in their varying difficulty. There are puzzles and secrets on top of puzzles and secrets throughout the island, and I'll admit, even as a returning player to the Grimrock franchise, many of the puzzles had me scratching my head for hours on end. But when I finally had that aha moment, the game made me feel like a genius. And in this age in gaming, it's nice to see a title that not only thinks it's smart, but also thinks its audience is smart as well. So better character creation, better world and level design, and better puzzles and enemies. This all sounds perfect, right? Well, my only real gripe with the second installment of The Legend of Grimrock is the story. My first trip into Grimrock was simply more intriguing. The cryptic messages and helpful hints of an adventurer who had progressed through the dungeon previously baited my interest, and the equally vague dream sequences drew me in with a great sense of mystery. The Legend of Grimrock II's story, just like its predecessor, is never heavy-handed, but it's just underwhelming when looking at how vastly improved all the other aspects of the game have evolved. Essentially, you're a group of bound prisoners just like in the first game, but during a voyage, your boat is shipwrecked on the island of Nex by a supernatural force. This seems to have been caused by a mysterious robed figure who has altered the Isle of Nex to basically act as a dangerous gauntlet of death for his own amusement. There is a backstory of people acting as emissaries to dragons, and philosopher's stones filling in the gaps, but overall the narrative isn't nearly as interesting as the original. Like the genre that spawned it, The Legend of Grimrock is light on narrative, but heavy on atmosphere created through isolation and seclusion of the wonderfully dreadful Isle of Nex. From one aspect to the next, the most important features that give The Legend of Grimrock its character remain intact. It's still a fantastic grid and group-based dungeon crawler, the action and combat is unique to the genre, and the puzzles are top-notch. But beyond many of the key aspects that we already knew The Legend of Grimrock did so well, Almost Human has improved on nearly every aspect of their vision to the dungeon crawler. As the world of Grimrock expanded, so did class creation and customization. With innovations made to many of the game's aspects, Grimrock II is so much more than a worthy successor to the installment that came before it. The Legend of Grimrock II is a tremendous step forward for the genre in its entirety.